All right, welcome back to another episode of What Works Wednesday. I'm your host, Leland Gross, and today we're going to talk about how to save and plan for your kids' future. So, a huge planning opportunity for people, a big piece where people are like, I want to do this, but I don't know how to do it well, is saving for their kids' future. Whether that's college, whether that's, trade school, whether that's we just want them to be set up however they want. There's a lot of different ways that you can do that. And it can be overwhelming. There's different tax kind of landmines, whether it's a good landmine or a bad landmine. And so I want to talk about a couple of the main ways. Now, this is not an exhaustive list because that would be really dependent on the situation, but there are very specific tools you can use to save for your kids' future. I'm going to be basing this off of, healthy, like developmentally typical children. Special needs planning is a totally different world with totally different tools at your disposal, which maybe we'll do an episode on that next. Who knows? But let's say you are a family in your 30s, you're having kids, and you're like, I want to save for their future. How do I do that? There's three main ways you can do it. The first is using just a bank account in your child's name, which is very normal. It's not a bad plan. The problem is it's really not growing. And likely what I find is very rarely are people accessing that money for their kids pre-18. You might, but for the most part, you're setting this aside for their future. And if it's not growing, it's just sitting there. You put in $100, it's going to be $100 a year from now, 2 years from now. So that is a way that you can do it. You can just set up a bank account. I see that all the time. And the first thing I want to do is say, let's get this actually growing for your kids so that we're actually maximizing the wealth you're creating for them. Which leads us into a custodial investment account. So an investment account in the name of your child. Typically, you'll see this called a UTMA, a Uniform Transfer to Minors account, or a UGMA, Uniform Gift to Minors account. Depending on your state, they choose one. But a UGMA is really just a custodial investment account where you are the custodian, you're the adult who can manage it, but it's for your child. You can invest it however you want. And the beautiful thing is they can use it for whatever they want. So if they want to go to college, great. If they want to buy a car, great. If they want to take a year-long trip to Ibiza, have a blast. They get to decide. So it's totally free as far as how they can use it. Now, there's a lot of cons to this account. So you have to really want the flexibility. The cons are when they turn 18, it's theirs. You don't have any say in it. The money, every time you put money in, that money is officially no longer yours and it's officially your child's. You just get to manage it until they turn 18, at which point it becomes their account. So I had a situation the first year ever that I worked with people and their finances where a parent came to me and said, hey, we've saved $150,000 for our daughter. She's 17. She's wild. She should not be trusted with this much money, yada, yada. How do we get the money out or prevent her from having it? And there wasn't a way. It's her money. You're just the custodian of it until, a few months when she turns 18. So it takes the power away from the parent, which a lot of parents don't want. Now, your angel baby will probably be the most successful, never do anything wrong child in their life, future president getting this country back on track. Of course, every parent thinks that, but not every parent gets the joy of experiencing that reality. So you just have to be okay with that. You have to think through, okay, do I want my child to have control of this money when they're 18? Will their brains be fully developed? The other downside to this account that's pretty significant is it's exposed to something called kiddie tax. So the government does not want ultra high net worth individuals just passing money to their kids for the money to get taxed at the kid's tax rate because your kid doesn't earn money. But when they get enough investment earnings, they have to file taxes. And so they don't want you just giving money to your kid so that you don't have to pay taxes on it. So they came up with something called the kiddie tax, which says the first, $1,100 that is earned on the investments is tax free. The second $1,100 is taxed at the kid's tax rate. which is, little to nothing. After $2,200 of earnings each year, it gets taxed at the parent's highest marginal income tax rate. So even you as the parent are not paying your highest marginal rate on everything. You're paying an effective rate. So some's at 10%, some's at 12, some's at 22, 24, etc. But your kid, after $2,200 of earnings, is going to be paying that 22, 24%, which is really disadvantageous, especially because, once this account gets to, $15,000 to $20,000, it's really not unreasonable to make more than $2,200 in a year. So you can quickly get to that kiddie tax threshold. So these accounts are really common, especially back in the day. It was just kind of what you did, but they're really disadvantageous from a tax perspective. And it gives, as the parent, you have to give up control of the funds. Not ideal. Now, an alternative, if you still want that flexible, hey, what if they don't go to college? What if they go to the military and get the GI Bill? What if they get scholarships? All of those questions, we still want them to use it for a down payment on a house, all of that. If that's still your concern, you can always set up a separate brokerage account in your name, earmark it for your kids. So, this money's for our kids. You have control. So if they're 18 and they should not have that money or they don't need that money, you don't have to give it to them. You could give it to them when they're 20, 25, 30. You could never give it to them. And it avoids kiddie tax. So you're still going to get, you're going to get taxed on the interest income and the capital gains and things like that. But it's going to most likely, depending on the situation, be more advantageous from a tax perspective than the kiddie tax. So that's one way that you can do that, where you maintain control, you avoid the kiddie tax, but it's really just setting up an account for yourself that you earmark for your kids. The last and final way that people save for their kids is through 529 accounts, so college savings accounts. Now, there's two types of 529s. There's a prepaid tuition plan where you basically pay tuition for this year, and then in 18 years, your kid has a year worth of college saved, but at today's rates. So you avoid the hyperinflation that education goes through. But those are pretty restricted. There's only, you have to go to college in that state. There's approved colleges for it. I don't find a lot of people using those. The other one is a 529, just college savings account, where you save into it, grows, they get to use it for college. And 529s are really wonderful for a lot of options. One, you, depending on your state, if the state allows for it, which many states do, if they charge income tax, you get a state income tax deduction for money you put in. So in Virginia, we get state income tax. We have a state 529. We get to put money in. We get a state tax deduction for it. You have to use your state's sponsored 529 account, which will be really easy. Search Virginia 529 plan, Georgia 529 plan, Oklahoma 529 plan, and it'll come up. So you use your state's program, you get a state income tax deduction. Secondly, the funds grow. So you're saving every month, the money's growing, and it's tax-free for higher education. So higher education can be university, grad school, trade school. It's pretty open and flexible for what it qualifies for. And it's for, tuition, books, room and board to an extent. You can't buy a house with it, but rent, dorms, things like that. And materials. So you could buy a laptop, you could buy books, you could buy, pencils, pens. Do they even use pencils or pens anymore? Whatever you need for education, it will cover, and it's tax-free to get money out for that, which is awesome. It's another way that you can put money in and grow it tax-free for the future. The additional thing about 529s, and this is true of a brokerage account or custodial account, grandparents, other family members can contribute to it. What I find is people feel way better contributing to a 529 just because they're saving for their loved one's college, and as opposed to they don't really know what it'll go towards. So that's just another incentive. You could say, hey, as opposed to giving my kid 10 toys that light up and scream and keep me up all day and annoy me, maybe give them one and then put the rest of that money towards their future, their 529. The big pitfall with 529s historically has been, well, what if my kid doesn't go to college? Or what if I save all these years, grow this money, and they get a full ride scholarship because my kid's going to be the next Michael Jordan? Well, that is problematic because now I've saved all this money that's not going to be used and has to be used for education. Well, 529s can be transferred. So you could transfer it to any other child. You can use it for yourself. You can transfer the beneficiary to anybody in the family tree. So that's another option. If one child doesn't go to school, give that money to the next kid. It also incentivizes education, which is a good thing. But if nobody in the family, absolutely no one wants an education, like the future of college is gone. Historically, it would be, all right, well, we just have to take the money out. You pay taxes and a penalty tax on the earnings. So not on what you've put in, just on the earnings. So if you put $10,000 in, you'll get the $10,000 out. But let's say over time it's now at $15,000, you pay taxes and penalty on the $5,000 that you earned. So you still walk away with more money than you put in. You just don't get the tax-free benefit, which is unfortunate. But starting this year, starting in 2024, what you can do if the child does not go to school and you don't have another option is you can every year move up to the Roth IRA contribution limit. So in 2024, that's $7,000. You can move $7,000 into a Roth IRA from a 529 for the benefit of that child, up to, at this point, $35,000 total. So you could do that for 5 years or so. So you can take the 529, which is grown tax-free, and move a chunk of it each year into a Roth IRA where it will continue to grow tax-free for the remainder of your child's life, and they will get to access it tax-free at 59 and a half as a retirement plan. So basically you can transition this education account into a Roth account. Now, it's, again, if you have $100,000 saved, that's only up to $35,000. So you will still probably need to, use the money some other way for another child or take the penalty. But who's to say that that limit won't change in the future? Who's to say that they won't just eventually move that in some regard? We don't know. The IRS, the government's a total wild card. But that is a very, very powerful benefit. If you start saving for your child when they're born for their education, they don't get an education and you can transition that to their retirement. Well, that's going to be a very, very, very powerful retirement account for them. Just having so much time to grow tax-free. All right. So you can use a bank account. You can use a custodial account. You can, if you don't want the kiddie tax or to give up control, you can use your own brokerage account, which, just earmark it for your kid, or you can use a 529 plan. 529 plans have the most tax advantages. They do have flexible options if the child doesn't want to go to school. But, it has some rules around it. The brokerage account in your name is the most flexible, but doesn't get a tax advantage to it. And the savings account is a savings account. It's pretty vanilla, but it's not going to grow, and that's not what you want. You want to grow your money. All right. So go forth, build the life you want for yourself and your kids, and prosper.